Hey, Jack.
Hey, Trevor, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great, man.
Glad to be back here for another episode of Hey, Jack.
You
Today, we
bet.
have a really interesting conversation about communication. But before we dive into that, we started getting a lot of amazing questions from you, the listeners, on your leadership related topics. And so we will be addressing those here in the next few episodes. So keep those coming. If you have any questions, we're taking that to heart. We're loving the feedback that we're receiving so far on this. And we're just having a blast having these conversations. And selfishly, I'm learning a lot along the way. And so we hope you are as well. But with that said, Jack, let's talk about communication because I know you've got some good insights and reflections on that.
All right, communication. So you asked me and us to do this, and I thought it was really smart. And I also had my own internal reaction. Oh, communication. That's right. We've got to do communication, and that's the poor. I feel bad for communication because it's this leadership topic that most people just don't think much about and care much about. Whereas when you do a great place to work survey on your business or an employee survey, they always say, I want more communication from the leaders. And then the leaders go, oh, yeah, don't worry, I'll do that. But then they don't. So it's really a very important topic for leaders is communication. And I'm really glad we're doing it. So thank you for asking
Yeah.
us to do this. Um, so I'm going to give you a headline, and then I want to tell my story at the front end instead of the back end today, or a story at the front end instead of the back end. And and the headline is this, that communication is one of those topics where nothing has changed. All of the foundational things we think about in communication for leaders is all the same. But it's also a topic in leadership where everything is changing. And we'll get into what
Yeah.
that means. But let me set the stage and maybe cause some great fond memories from the older listeners we have and maybe blow some minds of the younger listeners. And it's about communications when I started my career 43 or 4 years ago. So when I joined a company, didn't matter what company, I joined Honeywell 43 or 4 years ago, you were issued a desk and a phone on the desk and then a Rolodex, which was a little thing where you kept your business cards that people gave you. And then you bought a Franklin Planner, which is just a spiral notebook which had the day every day on it, and where you write your notes, and that was it. So try to imagine the way you work today, and then go back to then and say, wait a minute, what if I want to send an email to somebody? There was no email, and the phone was just at your desk. It wasn't in your car. So it always fascinated me how you say, okay, I'm going to communicate to somebody. I'm going to write a memo. And the way you did it was you hand wrote it on a pad, the whole memo, edited it, scribbling on it, whatever. And then you took that to somebody who was an assistant that their job was they have an IBM Selectric typewriter. And the Selectric typewriter had an automatic backup feature where it could remove a letter. So if it made they typed a mistake, they could fix the mistake. But no memory in this thing. It just, you still typed it. So then this person would type it all up. And then they would say, okay, he or she wants it to go to these 7 people, copy of these 12 people. That means 7 and 12 is 19. So they would go to the copier and make 19 copies, go back to their desk, and then they would highlight the person's name for each one and the 19. And then they would take the 19 memos down to the mailroom where somebody's job was to run the mailroom. And it would go in this box for the mail delivery. Actually, they might even not do that. That was if they were in a hurry. They would just stick it on their outbox, and then the mailroom person would come take it out of their outbox back to the mailroom. And then they would put it in everybody's cubbyhole or deliver it, depending if you had a cubbyhole delivery system or if you had a walk around. And sometimes you had people that walk around and they would show up and they would put something in your inbox. And if you had something on your outbox on your desk, they would take it out of your outbox. And Trevor, that was communication back in the day.
Yeah,
And I'll
not in that era.
And I'll never forget the day, and it was about in the late 80s, probably 88 or 89. I showed up and I had a desk and I got a computer. And first I got a computer and all you could do was basically Excel spreadsheets. And if you didn't have a spreadsheet to do, you didn't do anything with your computer because email hadn't been invented. And then one day, about 2 years later, they said, your computers now have email on them. And we were like, what's that? And they showed us how to type somebody's name, and you could send an email to the person next to you, and you go, did you get it? And they go, yeah, I got it. And they would reply. That's how far we've come in 40 years to
It's
what we do
crazy.
with communication today is so taken for granted. It just blows you away what has happened in the last 40 years. So anyway, that's a little history story on what communication used to be. I hope it hits some people's heartstrings. And then for the young kids, if you just go, yeah, that's crazy. And you're right. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's go to the two halves. So what hasn't changed? Because everybody can guess what has, but we're going to dive into it anyway. There are some basic fundamentals and building blocks, and everybody can write long lists of them. And I'll give you mine now. I had a longer list than I normally do. It's about 8 or 9 of them up here on the board. And I just want to touch on each of them and tell you why I think they're important in leadership. So the first one is the simple duality of written and oral communication as a leader, right? If you tell your team something in a meeting, for example, maybe everybody's got meeting notes, but make sure you go back later and write them an email about what is important that day or what you wanted them to take away, and then keep doing that more and more. Don't just do it once. That's the repetition part. So it's oral, written, both are important. And they show the importance by the more you do it, the repetition part. So that's simple stuff. The next one is actual human interaction is really important. These tools we work on today make human interaction close. I hate to say this, but probably close enough where, instead of just emailing people and having them email back and forth or you texting back and forth, getting on a FaceTime call or getting on a Teams call or getting on a Zoom call and making sure you're communicating eye to eye, even if it has that glass in the middle, that interaction part so that they can question and dialogue and make sure they get your message. I think interaction is still very, very vital to the written, oral, and interaction part, the trio of ways to communicate. Going back an episode ago, maybe two, I'm a big one on positivity in oral and written communication. Can you have a bad day every now and then? Sure. But on your day-to-day interactions with your employees, your peers, and your superiors, you should always try to be as positive as possible. And you should also always try to be as transparent as possible, right? People ask a question, you get them an answer. You try to share everything you know on a topic that's valid to the point of view that you're offering. And it's that positivity and transparency that people will wrap up and they'll call that genuineness. Oh, he or she is genuinely communicating. I get it. I believe in what they're saying to me. And then bolted onto that, there's going to be disagreements and arguments, if you will, but try to never let them get disrespectful. Always respect the other person's point of view. Always try to build the bridge, never a wall, because once the walls go up, it's so hard to take them down. So disagreeing, yes. Disrespectful, never. If you can achieve never, that's what you want to do. And that's up, down, sideways on disrespect. You just never do it. And then a big one on communication that came along 20 or 30 years ago was always you should listen more than you should talk, which we're violating that rule through a podcast here. As long as we make it up later when we have answers to questions of listeners and all that. But active listening came along as a topic. And I love active listening. I think it's the key to true communication. It's if you and I are discussing something and I bring you a point and I want you to ask me questions and you do I actively listen to you? Do I probe back? Do I say, "No, are you sure you got that? Let's go over that again." And you just really engage on the topic back and forth in a very active manner so that you both share the deepest understanding of that topic. Active listening is wonderful. It's just a wonderful concept, and people really need to embrace that topic of active listening. And then the hard messages part of communication as a leader is one you have to face up to, and I would simply call it. It's typically known as facing the music, if you will. When you have bad news to give, you will be judged as a great leader if you do it in person and let people talk to you about it. And that's really hard because we all want to avoid bad news. But it's the leader's job to deliver the bad news and to face the music and let people interact with you on that bad news. So it's really crucial. And then flipping the script there. I would recommend the use of humor in people's communication, although it's a delicate art and you have to be very,
Yeah.
very careful on humor because of diversity as a word, meaning everybody's mind sets up differently and you never want to insult anybody for their beliefs. So always think about safe humor, but making sure that safe humor is injected on a daily basis and a frequent basis. Because you know what? You got 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours working with other employees. A little laugh here and there throughout the day really breaks the tension and the tone. I highly recommend humor, but be very careful on how you use it and learn from it. And if you make a mistake, you apologize. And then back up and regroup and figure out why you did that. But humor can be very helpful in building bonds with your employees. And then lastly, if you're doing written communication, which we all embrace written communication, it's helpful in lots of different ways, but rereading what you wrote, and we're all in a rush to get stuff out. Look, I understand it. I get it. You're swamped with your to-do list. But if you have a certain number of your communications, they're going to be little templates for you that you want them very well understood. Make sure you reread them, or offer it to somebody else, a good peer of yours, to say, "Hey, do me a favor, give this a read before I send it out. I want to make sure I've got this right." That is a strong technique for making sure you do the big ones correctly. So that's it. A little laundry list of topics inside of communication. What hasn't changed? And now I'll quickly shift gears, Trevor, and going to put you on the spot because I think you're far more an expert on these next two topics. But what has changed or is changing every day in communication are A, social media, and B, AI. And with that, I thought I'd throw it back to you and say, Trevor, do us all a favor and share some of your thoughts on how social media has become a leadership topic.
Yeah, great topic there, Jack. And I think when it comes to communication, just you and I even doing this podcast, like I think of our communication, that list that you gave, and we were able to have these conversations. You'll pick up the phone, just give me a call, ask a topic. I'll call you and bug you for something, and we have that ability to have open communication because I think we're at least self-aware of that list. And that also has to translate over as well into this world of social media. And I think where a lot of leaders make the mistake is that they tend to just separate social media from actually being present in the workplace or within the tools that they're using. And being a leader on social media, it doesn't only just mean being present, building your personal brand, but it also means how are you showing up and appearing on the platform that your employees and the individuals that you're helping lead are also on. And to give a great example of this is when you first started getting on social media, when I was really pushing hard, hey, Jack, get on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. I didn't ask you to do this piece I'm going to talk about, but you just naturally embodied it and did it anyways, which is you would not even post yourself. You were more concerned about commenting on the employee's post. And every time I log on, I would see you underneath their post saying, "Great job, this is amazing." And I know from conversations around the organization that really stood out. That meant a lot to those people, and they would comment on, "Oh, Jack commented on it," and then it meant a lot. But I think when you're out there as a leader, you need to number one, get active and engage. That's the first thing. Number two is you have to come across as authentic on social as you would in person. And I think, I don't know where the stigma came from, but I think a lot of people put themselves in this box where they feel like they can't misstep or be authentic to themselves. And I would encourage people to actually take that step out and be authentic to yourself. There's only one you, that's what makes you unique and authentic. And once you do that, you're going to start having a lot more fun on social media as well. And we're really entering this era of thought leadership. Some people call this like the founder's brand, where they're building in public, they're sharing what they're learning in public, and it's building that connection between them and their audience and their employees. And so I would just say on social media, number one, the same list applies. You have to be mindful of what you're posting. Don't do anything that's going to get you on the front page of the Wall Street Journal in a negative way. But more importantly, just be authentic. It sounds so basic, but I think you'll be surprised at once you embrace being your authentic self and then you actually engage with your employees and realize that this is another place for you to showcase that leadership and that you actually care as a leader, and that makes a huge impact. And that's why you're able to have the tough conversations and so forth. So that's the high level on social media.
Yeah. It's my reflecting on my journey with it too, and I learned a lot doing it. I would add to your list or your instruction there that be careful to get too monolithic. If you just say, okay, I'll go on social media, I'll just every time my employee does something, I'll say, good job, good job,
Yeah, yeah.
good job, good job. And I've seen this where some of these leaders think, okay, I got to go on and I only have a few minutes, so they just go send good job, and that's all that ever happens.
I see it daily. It's a
And
shame.
the sincerity went to zero with that. The employees see that too. There they say, okay, yeah, he or she's just doing it to check the box. And they
Yeah.
don't really think I did a good job. Look at what they've posted, comment on it and how good it was and what you thought of it. And as long as they make some diversity in it, it works because it's true. They just
Yeah.
they just would love to have your feedback as a leader, and it's an easy and fast. The beauty of it is an easy and fast way to do it. So
Very easy. And
it's
it's
really
out there that others can see as well,
yeah
which is great. And to that point, I think it's a nice transition. I know you wanted me to touch on AI as well.
yeah. Let's go to
Uh,
AI.
yeah, so AI is an interesting one. And one of the things right off the bat that I'll mention on LinkedIn specifically, what's happening is there's all these tools now with AI, and they're auto commenting on people's posts as you. And so when you're seeing these good jobs and so forth, people are doing this because they're trying to trick the algorithm into engaging a lot so that when they post, it'll give them more reach. And that's a whole deep rabbit hole we can go down in another episode. But what that does is it's like you mentioned, these individuals, AI is just writing them comments. Good job, good job, good job. And with the emergence of these tools, I actually think authenticity is going to be the key now. In a world of AI content and fluff and everything else, it's a dangerous slope for leaders. And I think the ones that are going to rise up, that are currently rising up that I'm seeing, they're the ones that can't be replicated by AI. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that is just from an engagement standpoint, you would leave very meaningful, thoughtful comments. It has to be a comment that when somebody reads it, they know it came from Jack
Yeah.
because it's your tone, it's your approach, it's authentic. And my fear is that, and this is the rule I live by, is I don't want anyone to ever think it's not me running my social media account. And that
Yeah.
happens in comments I leave, messages that I send, posts that I make. And AI is getting to this point where, unless you have a trained eye, it's pretty good at being able to distinguish between what's real and what's AI. So I would say, as a leader, number one, embrace AI. It's not going anywhere, it's here to stay. But I would also say use this to your advantage. Use it as a tool as a leader to give you ideas on how you can build content strategies and game plans. Use it to help you get a first draft or a first pass at how you might want to articulate something out there in the ecosystem. But also embrace your authenticity, because if you can create uniqueness, which is really hard to do, you're going to stand out in a sea of AI content.
Hmm.
And one of the best examples for this is this podcast. It's really hard to replicate this because this is actually you and I showing up week after week, putting out content, engaging and listening. Now, yeah, sure, there's some AI in the background that we're using to help us produce it, get the content out there, get some ideas and so forth, but we're leaning into it. We're not looking at it as a full on replicated approach. And so, bringing this back to communication, I just think it's more important than ever now to do everything that we can, until the dust settles at least, to do
Yeah.
everything that we can to just continue to prove we're ourselves, we're here, we're authentic, we're showing up. And it can be as simple as showing up on video on these platforms and kind of sharing your face and your message, leaving those more meaningful comments and posts, and so sharing experiences. If you want to message somebody, one of the best ways right now is to send them a voice note on LinkedIn. That's your
Hmm.
voice. Sure, AI can do that, but again, people are going to know if you're authentic and if it's, human. So I would say lean into these tools, lean into AI, but also realize there's a lot of negative down effects, and you can't take a shortcut to communication, even with AI, if you want it to come across as genuine,
Yeah.
authentic, and represent yourself.
Yeah. You can't take a shortcut, but mine as well. Use it as a productivity enhancer
Yeah,
in
very
in your
much.
leadership communication. Hey AI, here's the content of an email I have. Turn it into a 5-page PowerPoint presentation for
Yeah.
me. Just that will save you a half an
Save
hour.
you time. Yeah.
So
And you can also use AI as well as a leader. You can use it to get a second set of opinions. I mean, you
yeah,
could feed AI a scenario or what you're thinking, or I've even asked it to act as a life coach. Give me the ramifications of this decision I'm about to make. And one of the things I like to ask is, what are the blind spots that I'm not seeing? And just small things like that. It can help. It can definitely help us throughout that. But again, it's like we're so early in this that I think
yeah,
everyone's trying to navigate and figure it out. But I always go back and say, use common sense, use it to your advantage, but don't let it use you.
you bet. All right, so we've covered it. Those are my two halves of communication. All the things we should know, the well publicized tools and standards of good communication, and then making sure leaders embrace social media as part of it doesn't replace, but part of your leadership
Part of.
communication tool basket. It's really gonna help. And then AI, we all need to learn to embrace and learn with it, and it's coming super fast. Maybe we'll hold the downsides for later.
Yeah.
So the big one, I have a few in the back of my head with AI. One of them is about digital natives, the millennials knowing how to work computers and software, and then the future of it. Will they still, or will they become something called digital nomads? Maybe we look at that as a whole different episode. So
Yeah, it's a great idea. I think we'll cover that in an upcoming episode, because that also has a lot of depth to it, a lot of layers that I think deserves its own episode.
sounds great.
And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, if you have any topic suggestions, there is a link in the show notes where you can submit those, or even if you have any questions, and we'll be happy to address those. But otherwise, thanks for tuning in, and hope that this helps your communications. Thanks,
Take
Jack.
care, everybody. Go lead.